Before life blesses you, it will break you first. Have you ever wondered why, just before everything beautiful arrives, your life feels like it is collapsing from within? Have you ever noticed how, right before people meet a love that is worthy or step into their purpose, they experience loss, confusion, or even unbearable silence? Most people mistake these signs for failure. But the wise ones, those who observe deeply, know the universe is not punishing them. It is preparing them. Buddha's story warmly welcomes you to today's reflection. What I am about to share may sound unsettling at first, but stay with me. This truth has echoed across centuries, hidden inside ancient Buddhist teachings and the forgotten wisdom of the soul. Once you understand it, you will never look at your suffering the same way again. Before life gives you more, it strips away what no longer serves you. But the process does not look like a celebration. It looks like emptiness. It feels like you are losing your mind. It sounds like silence so loud it drowns your thoughts. And yet, this is how life works. The lotus only blooms from the mud. The brightest stars only appear in the darkest skies. And you too will only rise after breaking apart. So, before we dive deeper, if you resonate with this message, support Buddha Story by subscribing to the channel. Your presence gives us the motivation to create more videos that speak to your journey. When I think of this hidden process of unraveling, I am reminded of the story of Aveline. She was not famous, not a spiritual teacher, but her journey mirrors the forgotten truth many face. Aveline lived a life most would envy, a successful career, a charming partner, and a social circle that admired her. But late at night, beneath the surface of achievements, there was an emptiness she could no longer silence. The laughter at gatherings echoed like rehearsed performances. The conversations felt shallow, scripted, lifeless. At first, she blamed herself. Maybe she was ungrateful. Maybe she needed a new goal, another accomplishment. So she ran faster, worked harder, filled her schedule with distractions. But no matter what she did, the discomfort only deepened. And then, everything fell apart. Her partner left, her job lost its meaning, and friends she thought were family drifted away. It was as if life had declared war on everything she built. She felt stripped of identity, of direction, of purpose. But here is the paradox no one talks about. It was not destruction, it was preparation. Life was not tearing her down, it was clearing space. Space for something her old self could not carry. In Buddhism, we call this anicca, the law of impermanence. Nothing stays the same. Clinging to the old only prolongs the suffering. It is in letting go that the new is allowed to emerge. But letting go is terrifying. It means facing the raw, uncomfortable silence. It means surrendering control, releasing attachments, even if they once defined your worth. But it is in that surrender that true strength grows. The Buddha himself walked this path. Siddhartha Gautama was once a prince sheltered by luxury. But even in his palace, a whisper of discontent stirred within him. He saw the sickness, the aging, the inevitable death outside the palace walls. And he could not unsee the truth. His life of indulgence became a prison of ignorance. So he left it all behind. His title, his family, his comforts. People called him foolish, selfish, unstable. But they could not understand. His unraveling was not his downfall. It was his awakening. And maybe that is where you are now. Everything familiar feels distant. The person you used to be no longer fits. The relationships, the routines, even the successes feel empty. It is not a sign you are broken. It is a sign you are being rebuilt. Aveline discovered this after months of resisting. She sat alone, night after night, questioning everything. The discomfort suffocated her, but slowly the noise faded. In its place came clarity. She remembered forgotten passions. She reconnected with her body, her breath, her being. The unraveling had stripped away her false self, but beneath the rubble, her real essence waited. The blessing did not come as applause. It arrived as peace. It arrived as alignment. It arrived as a life that no longer required performance, but presence. The lotus blooms only after being submerged in mud. You too are being submerged. You too may feel lost. But remember, the mud is not your grave. It is your foundation. Your confusion, your discomfort, your unraveling. These are not endings. They are beginnings disguised as endings. So I ask you now to reflect. When life begins to strip away what feels familiar, what will you do? Here's a question to contemplate. Comment your answer below. When life begins to unravel, will you A. Cling tighter to what is falling apart out of fear of the unknown? B, sit with the discomfort, trust the process, and make space for something greater to emerge. Share your answer in the comments. Your reflection may inspire someone walking through the same storm. The silent art of letting go before life expands you. Most people imagine that the act of letting go is a grand cinematic moment, a dramatic goodbye, a declaration of independence, the applause of liberation. But in truth, when life is preparing to expand you, when it is calling you into alignment with something more profound, the process of detachment arrives quietly, often disguised as discomfort, as disinterest, as a slow unraveling of what you once held dear. It is rarely loud. More often, it is an intimate, unseen shift happening deep within. Your mind no longer sparks with excitement for the things that used to fuel you. The roles you wore like armor, the dependable partner, the high achiever, the one who always says yes, begin to feel like garments 2 sizes too small. Your relationships feel stretched, your conversations start to lose depth, and even your most familiar routines echo with hollowness. For many, this quiet disconnection sparks panic. They scramble to reignite the old flame, to revive their former identity, to cling to the structures of their familiar life. But here lies the wisdom few speak of. The gentle detachment is not an ending to resist. It is the invitation to evolve. One of the clearest teachings within Buddhist philosophy reminds us, attachment is the root of suffering. Yet, detachment is misunderstood. It is not indifference. It is not abandonment. It is the sacred space between clinging and apathy. The courageous choice to release what no longer aligns, even when your heart trembles. Consider the story of Nathaniel, a man who spent decades building his identity around external success. His reputation preceded him, his career flourished, and his relationships reinforced his sense of self-worth. But life, as it always does when we are ready to grow, began to whisper differently. The projects that once ignited him now drained him. The titles that defined him became hollow echoes. Even the connections that once validated him felt like shallow exchanges. Nathaniel resisted at first, mistaking his discomfort for failure, believing he had lost his ambition, his clarity, his drive. But beneath that resistance stirred a deeper truth. Life was inviting him to release the outdated layers of himself. Detachment does not always arrive with loss. Sometimes it simply feels like outgrowing your own life. The conversations that once consumed you now bore you. The spaces you once chased approval within now suffocate you. The people you once feared losing now feel misaligned with your evolving essence. For Nathaniel, detachment was not easy. His identity was intertwined with his achievements, his image, his relationships. Letting go meant confronting the terrifying question, who am I without these labels? But true detachment is not about losing yourself. It is about returning to yourself, the self that exists beneath society's expectations, beneath external validation, beneath fear. Buddha's journey itself is the purest reflection of this process. Siddhartha Gautama did not detach from his princely life overnight. It began with discomfort, witnessing suffering outside palace walls, questioning the illusion of permanence, feeling the quiet misalignment with the life designed for him. It was only through honoring that inner discord that he found the strength to release his attachments and walk toward awakening. In modern life, detachment looks quieter, subtler, but equally profound. You stop forcing conversations that drain your spirit. You no longer pursue relationships built on performance rather than presence. You allow people to misunderstand you, knowing your worth is no longer dependent on their perception. You no longer rush to fill the silence because you trust the wisdom that grows there. This, too, was the path for Eleanor, a woman who had defined herself by how much she could give to her partner, her family, her community. For years, her sense of worth was tied to being indispensable, to meeting others' needs before her own. But life, with its quiet but persistent lessons, began to peel back her attachments. The more she poured into others, the more depleted she became. The more she clung to outdated roles, the more misaligned her life felt. At first, detachment terrified her. To step back, to prioritize herself, felt like selfishness. But over time, she realized it was not selfishness. It was alignment. The detachment was not rejection. It was the courageous act of clearing space for authenticity. As Buddhist philosophy teaches, detachment is not about erasing emotion. It is about cultivating clarity. You love, but you do not cling. You give, but you do not deplete yourself. You engage, but you do not lose yourself within others. Eleanor's quiet unraveling led her to rediscover forgotten parts of herself, her creativity, her curiosity, her connection to her body. She learned to walk away from relationships that diminished her. She allowed herself to feel the discomfort of solitude without rushing to fill the space. And as she released the chains of old expectations, life expanded in ways she never imagined. The paradox is this: the space created by detachment often feels empty at first. But in that emptiness, life plants the seeds of new beginnings, relationships rooted in resonance, opportunities aligned with your soul, clarity that transcends performance. Detachment does not strip you of life's beauty, it invites deeper beauty to find you. But first, it requires courage: the courage to release the known for the unknown, the courage to trust the quiet unraveling, the courage to believe that what is meant for you cannot be lost. In the end, detachment is not about closing your heart. It is about opening it, but with discernment. It is about choosing peace over performance, authenticity over approval, alignment over attachment. And when you master this silent art, you no longer fear letting go. You understand every ending clears the path for something greater to emerge.